So how much can I afford? There's some good content in this section, and the overall premise is asking you to do way too much work. My first suggestion when you're thinking about how much can I afford is to talk to a lender. Talk to a lender. A lot of buyers, for some reason, consumers in general, for some reason have this aversion to talking to a professional. And I know why. It's usually tied to the fact that you don't want someone to start to pester you. You don't want somebody to try to convert you into a transaction or to a closing. And that's understandable. And at the same time, there's so much you don't know about the home buying process, about the real estate process, and a lot changes, especially from the lending side of the equation. Right? The lending side of the equation changes so frequently and so often that you want to know what is the most recent news about the real estate market. And you can't get that from your own research. And this section suggests you can get a hold of your budget. You can increase your income as much as possible. You can check your credit, make sure your credit report is up to date. But after that, everything else is really on a professional side of the conversation. So I highly recommend that you try to refrain from solving too many of these equations, too many of these problems that would really be better suited for a professional, preferably a local lender. But before we get into the lender conversation, let's talk about what you're looking for, or what will the lender offer you. Two forms of documents that we use on almost every real estate transaction on the buy side, on the buying side, that is going to be a pre-approval or a pre-qualification. So when you talk about pre-qualification is usually no obligation, it's informal, it's a specific purchase price, or at least the lender will give you a purchase price or at least a range based on information you verbally provide them. This is a verbal commitment to the lender. This is simply off of word is bond. I trust what you're saying is true. Here is a document that says this is what you can qualify for. So that's what a pre-qualification is, right? A lot of people can get them online quite easily and quickly. You could just fill in your information on any online lending service and they could give you a number super fast. Is purity trash. Now, the next thing you can get from a lender is called a pre-approval letter. Now, a pre-approval letter has just a few more qualifications to it, right? This is a document where the lender has actually verified your information. So this is based on facts. This is based on documentation. What documentation? Pay stubs, bank statements, your W-2s, or any other tax-related documents. This pre-approval letter has a little bit more weight than a pre-qualification letter. The lender knows information about you, whereas the pre-qualification letter, the lender really has no idea if you're telling the truth. And this is why it's dangerous shopping with that letter, because you could very well put a property under contract and not really be able to purchase that home. You don't want to put yourself in that position, because at the very beginning of every real estate transaction is going to be home inspection contingencies. So you're going to be removing these contingencies, which require some investment on your part to pay for a home inspection. There's also earnest money deposit. There's all these expenses that you will be making at the beginning of the transaction. So it makes sense for you to know just how much you can afford. The only way you can do that is through pre-approval, by providing the lender with these documents and then shopping from that letter, right? Shop from the pre-approval letter, not the pre-qualification letter. One thing this book recommends that I disagree with is they recommend that you actually figure out your buying power, your purchasing capability by yourself. They give you a couple calculations here. I disagree with this idea because there are too many programs that are offered by different lenders that will make it challenging for you to know exactly what the debt to income ratio, also what are the down payment requirements, what are the closing costs tied to this transaction. You kind of need to know what the down payment is and the closing cost numbers are going to be potentially, so you can know your entire expense tied to purchasing this property. These are numbers that the lender can provide you quite easily. If you figured out some numbers yourself, like say for instance, you put some of these calculations together that they're recommending, which is like your maximum monthly payment worksheet, or you fill out the estimated purchase price worksheet, that has nothing to do with anything because the lender is the person who gives you the money. It's not like you're going to magically be able to qualify yourself for a loan. That's not going to happen. So since you have no control over how much money you can actually access, talk to a professional as soon as possible. Debt to income ratio is something you're going to see often that's going to be spoken to you, especially by the lender. And usually you hear the acronym DTI, right? So DTI, debt to income ratio. Debt to income ratio takes into consideration how much debt you have in relationship to your income, right? So debt to income ratio. Lenders use this quick calculation to determine the range of the loan or the purchase price you could afford. They have two numbers. They usually have a number that's tied just to the mortgage debt, and then they have another number that's going to be tied to your overall debt. So the number that's tied to your mortgage debt, when we were doing some research preparing for this, what we found is on average, we're looking at 28% for your mortgage expenses. So if you take your monthly salary, right? So you get to your monthly salary or your monthly gross income by taking your salary, your annual wages, dividing that by 12, whatever that number is. 28% of that number is going to be what lenders believe that you could comfortably pay for a mortgage, okay? And that is a gross income number. On the high end, you're going to also have your total debt. So your total debt is going to include items, your student loans, auto loans, your car loans, credit cards, and any other types of loans. So in the event that you have another home, or maybe you co-signed for someone, anywhere there's some type of debt, that will count against your ability to finance. And this is why it's in your benefit to talk to a lender, because they'll be able to pull your credit report to see all the items that are negatively impacting your purchase power. When you're thinking about what type of lender you want to use, it is in your best interest to talk to, at the very minimum, two lenders. At the very minimum, two lenders. Your first lender, the first lender you talk to, should be the person you believe you would use regardless of the second person's input, right? So that means that it's ideal for you to get a recommendation to this person. In my opinion, you should give them all of your documents, right? So remember what we talked about, the difference between pre-qualification, pre-approval. You want them to give you a pre-approval. The reason why you want them to give you a pre-approval letter is you want them to tell you all of the documents you need so you can gather all of that paperwork up at front. Will this negatively impact your credit score? Possibly. But the negative effect you have on your credit score shouldn't matter, because you're getting certainty around what your budget is, what your housing budget is, how you're going to shop for property. So there has to be some level of discomfort, which your credit score will be impacted or could be impacted. So that's it. I think that this question number 28, how much can I afford? I think it'll give you a nice overview of what lenders would expect. I just don't want you to make any firm decisions on this content, because your opinion of what you can afford doesn't matter. The lender has to say, okay, great, based on your earnings and based on your debt, this is what my company, right? This is what the bank will give you, right? And then now you know exactly what you can do with that information. Once they tell you how much you can afford, you also want to know what is the down payment requirement, how much closing costs I have to bring to the table. A lot of people think that the down payment and closing costs are similar. They're not similar. They're not even related. So you want to know these numbers up front. The lender can give you specific numbers about what they estimate for the closing costs. They're going to give you estimates on the insurance, which is really going to be the only number that will have some confusion. Insurance and HOA and condo fees, right? Because they're not going to know the specifics. They're not going to know what property you're targeting. So they won't be able to properly guess that number, right? Other than that, you will have a great number to go off of so that you can know either how much money you need to save in the event that you need to save. So that's it. Question number 28, how much can I afford?